So today we're going to discuss my top 5 world building books for new fantasy authors with a focus on cheap and or free books for those authors just starting out who are always on a budget, even though it doesn't get any better the longer you do it, let me tell you. When a lot of these books that I'm going to bring up, I mentioned a reference in my first book, Fantasy World Building for Fantasy Fans and Authors, but that one was more focused on the theory and all the stuff that undergirds fantasy world building. So that's why Mark Wolf's world building textbook, or Le Guin's and Tolkien's essays on the subject, and Middleton's Rhetorics of Fantasy showed up in that one, but aren't going to make the list on this one. These are more focused on what you can do and how-tos. That's just what I was focusing on in my second book. The book, Fantasy World Building Workbook, is much more focused on the how-to and what's rather than the why itself. So it's more of the approaches and purposeful world building, which means that everything needs to focus on what's on the page and what can be done for it and how it affects the audience interaction with it, rather than world building for world building's sake. So these are my best 5. These are my favorite, other than my own, which has obviously 750 world building questions. So that's quite a few. Anyways, so again, drum roll. Top 5 books. The first one that I enjoyed the most was On Writing World Building by Timothy Hickson. You probably know him as Hello Future Me. He has a very popular YouTube channel, and these are adaptations, I believe, of the scripts for those. So these are covered in the show, or his YouTube channel, which are visually appealing, but it is a great resource with a lot of insights from him with things like soft magic systems, how they're used for character development, and hidden worlds and portal fantasies. Like, that's really some great notes from him. You have to put up the little typos and type of things, like what was it? Alan Moore did not write The Dark Knight. I think someone harps on that a lot, and but it is a great resource with a lot of great ideas. The second one that I really liked is The World Builder's Guidebook. This is an old, out-of-print D&D, AD&D, in fact, 2nd edition source book by Richard Baker, who I was lucky enough to chat with very, very briefly about my first book, and he was very, very kind. Anyways, this is out of print. It's from the 90s, but so you can find the original source book for like $30, but it's only $4.99 if you go to Drive-Thru RPG, and you get a downloadable PDF. I do all of my stuff electronic, so that's why I'm giving electronic prices for all of these. This is a great book. It has loads of D&D type stats and ideas. Just if you can't think of something, there's a section on climate and culture, and just roll some 100%ers or just look through the list and it should spark some ideas. I highly recommend this book. Even though it is for role-playing games, it will help all world builders, authors especially. Third one is A Magical Society's Guide to Mapping by Jay Browning, but it was Expeditious Retreat Press. This is actually a free 37-page pamphlet they put out on PDF. I think it's also on Drive-Thru RPG. Highly recommend. It's so much information is packed into those 37 pages. This is all about the mapping, how to do continental drift, how cultures or species would spread, how languages would spread, etc., etc. So if you ever wonder about how I would make a map, just the basics and very, very actionable stuff, that's the one to go to, and free, so that is wonderful. Fourth on my list is the A through Z's of Worldbuilding, building a fiction world from scratch by Rebecca Lopper, I'm guessing, not Looper. This is $3.99 on Amazon, and even though I didn't actually mention it in my first book, it was really, really useful. She adapted this from her blog series of A through Z's of stuff, so that's actually kind of its limitations, in that it's not logically by my system laid out, but there's some wonderful questions. You just have to go through them A to Z, and so hope that it's under architecture and not building or something like that. Anyways, loads of stuff to spark your imagination. Definitely check that one out if you want a very long list of world building ideas and prompts. And finally, Guns, Germs, and Steel by Jared Diamond. This is a classic, and I know people are kind of turning against it, and it's lately within the anthropology field and social sciences, because it is kind of reductionistic, and the idea that geography shapes cultures and civilizations, and While we can argue those terms for the real sciences, it is wonderful for world building because it makes you think in those big kind of top-down ideas and how the geography does affect cultures and societies and that type of thing, which, since it is a fictional world and everyone demands things make sense, his theories are really, really great. And it is just little things about how, domesticated seeds can travel along the latitudinal lines instead of longitudinal lines, and like that. Oh wow, that was really interesting, and can help you build some better worlds that way by thinking of your world as a global whole rather than just little bits for your adventures to take place. So there you go. Those are 5 books that I highly recommend. Guns, Germs, and Steel was the 1035. You can just borrow it from the library. Very good book. It might get a little esoteric. And there you go again. Top 5 books other than my own, which should be out hopefully now at this point. I hope you can use these things to build some better worlds.